say about beauty sleep?
Sorry. Bad dream.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody, my name is Kevin.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. Ladies and gentlemen, it's February. You know what that means. It's the real season of love. On the Real Season of Love, we take a look at all your favorite romance movies, and on this year's series, we're taking a look at the Twilight Saga, more specifically, Breaking Dawn Part 1. The Quileutes close in on unexpecting parents Edward and Bella, whose unborn child poses a threat to the wolf pack and the towns of Forks. Guys, this is by far the worst movie I've seen in quite some time. And to be fair, this was part of that trend that I'm thankful has stopped and we maybe won't ever see again of splitting. A movie does not need to be in two parts, a part one and part two. I don't know why in the year of 2011 of our Lord that every movie decided to say, hey, let's make our final movie two parts so we can make tons of money. I'm looking at you, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, all those other dystopian movies that decided to do it. You know who you are and what you did. Twilight, though, you kind of set the standard a little bit for that, too, because you said we need to make so much money that we need to split this plot into two movies. And by God, this is the most boring goddamn thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It's not even as long as the other movies. It felt even longer. It felt like a 5-hour movie that I was watching. When you talk about something that literally nothing happens, I look at this movie as my example to anyone that really needs to see it. We finally get the big wedding in the Twilight series where Edward and Bella, who've been, loving each other suddenly, for the past 3 movies, in this 4th entry, like, oh, we're going to get married. Literally, they get married, they go on a honeymoon, they have a baby. That's the end. Nothing actually happens in this movie. Literally nothing actually happens. There's some funny things we can talk about, and I think there is some points where we can kind of say, they're having a little bit of fun with the material, and I think that's kind of interesting. But overall, god damn it, I wish I just didn't watch this. This was such a waste of time. Adam, go ahead. You just tell me what you think. I can't even talk about it right now.
This was my favorite entry thus far. No, I'm just kidding.
Adam's like,
no, yeah, this one I vividly remember. Yeah, saying as soon as this one ended, I was like, wait, that's it?
Right.
Nothing happened. I shouted that, aloud.
Yeah, it's over. Nothing happened. That's exactly what I said. Nothing happened.
Yeah, talk about a movie that really suffers. Like, between the first part and the second part, I really wish that they had kept them at least in one film. Maybe they split them up because of the fact that, in their brains they're like, oh, we can't have her have the baby and then have all the other events that happen afterwards.
Right.
I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the problem is there's nothing in this to justify its existence of being interesting even remotely. That's the problem.
Yeah, it felt like we were going through a whole 9 months of the pregnancy there.
Like, I would have preferred them just, show, a brief recap of what happened at the beginning of the next movie and then show, the birth of the baby, which we'll kind of talk about because that's not even really in this movie either, to be honest with you. I didn't need a whole hour and 57 minutes of my time wasted sitting here watching Edward and Bella say, I love you, and then breaking the bed during their raunchy sexcapades, and then... Again, I know I'm not the target audience. I fully understand that. But the problem is, I don't know if teens are really your target audience for that because it's just not interesting. I'm sorry. I don't know who finds this interesting. Julie, did you find this interesting? Please tell me you did.
No, it's so boring. You can only watch so much of it because they have sex the one time and then it's Bella trying to get Edward back in bed. I don't know. I like the wedding. That was pretty. The makeup is maybe the best that it's looked for the most part, hair and makeup. But for me, I guess it just keeps coming back to it personally. I think the most interesting thing in this movie is involving the wolf pack.
Which ironically, I don't know if anyone else noticed. I feel like the wolves were the incorrect size in this movie. I don't know if they decided to shrink them down because they were a lot larger in the other movies. And then I don't know if it was just the camera angles or not, but they seemed like they were smaller. or something. It seemed off.
Like regular wolves.
Right? That's what it seemed like more, honestly. They didn't seem like as large and as like ferocious as they did in the past couple movies. This movie really seems like they dropped the ball with that.
And I guess in a lot of the time it's showing them just amongst themselves. So it's maybe a little bit harder to get like if I'm trying to play devil's advocate, like if you're trying to get a sense of scale, they're all big. And if they're all around each other, like they don't have Bella around them to make them look like as massive as they truly are. But you're probably right. I'm sure the size was messed up.
Right. So ultimately, what's the issue with this? Again, it's incredibly boring. What we kind of I boil this down to is you could make the argument there's 30 minutes or so of material in this movie, right? That you probably need in order for the story to continue and for it to make sense in the next one. I think that's like a fair assessment. Them getting married, going on the honeymoon, having this crazy pregnancy that comes out of nowhere. It's like a teen mom movie out of nowhere almost. Again, I don't understand. I know why they did it. We're not stupid, right? We all know why they did this. They did this to make tons of money. They forced you to watch something so you can watch the finale. That's why this movie exists. But again, it's so awkward in its presentation and everything about it. The pacing's just a mess. Again, I know the book's probably similar in some retrospects. I don't really remember too much about the book for the finale. But
again, it's hard to argue because it's one book.
Right, and that's the problem. But everything in this movie feels inorganic. When you split something up, you want to give us more material. Like Eclipse, for example. The last movie we watched, I praised it for some of its side story content, which I thought was incredibly interesting. And if that was somehow maybe split for some reason or spun off into another material, I kind of get that. I get why that would exist to enhance the story or tell another story. The problem is you obviously can tell in this movie how inorganic they're stretching out the material. When I first noticed it, the first time it really just kind of like sold it to me, is when they're on their honeymoon and there's literally, I don't know, 3 or 4 montages of Edward and Bella just hanging out on their honeymoon. There's like one of them like playing chess, one of them just going in the water. It's not really romantic. It's just like meandering. Like I don't really see the appeal. Adam, were you able to tell just how inorganic this felt stretched out?
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that's to kind of show, the teens, like here's what love is like.
You know what it is?
Only if you get married.
You ever have a friend that goes on vacation and they say, let me show you pictures from my vacation and what happened, and they tell you like the background of everything that happened in those pictures, like, hey, here, we were on the beach that day. Oh, it was crazy. It was so hot. The sand was so hot. So we both went into the water. We took off our clothes because we're silly and crazy and we just did whatever. That's what this movie is. It's pretty much like someone on their vacation. Yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to live vicariously through them.
Yeah, then that's what this is, right? This is someone's slideshow. I'm watching a young couple's slideshow of them on a honeymoon. That's really what this is. And then, at that point, whatever, we get through all that. They have the, after marriage sex because, they can't have sex before they're married. I love how Stephanie Meyer had to throw that in there. That's kind of interesting that she decided to go that route. So they do that. Then suddenly what happens? Every teen's worst nightmare. She's immediately pregnant after having sex, probably scaring every teen and younger who ever watched a movie saying, if I have sex, I'm going to get pregnant immediately after. So
is this secretly a public service announcement?
I think this movie is, right? That's exactly what this is. So kids, if fathers at home, if you don't want your daughter to have sex, just show them this movie at Twilight and say, that's what'll happen to you immediately after. It's a mess, this movie. It's hilarious, and there's so many things that just don't logically make sense about a vampire and a human having a baby together. I'm not going to go into the physical details of why that probably couldn't happen with them being cold and having no blood flow. The audience at home, you guys could put that together. It's just not that interesting, and how it escalates and rapidly moves so quick. If I didn't know that's how it kind of happens in the book, I would think the movie was just doing that to like shove a side story into this movie to make the next movie more interesting. Because that's what it feels like, right? It just feels like we're going at like breakneck, like, oh, I'm pregnant. Oh, well, it goes really quick. It goes really quick. That's how it works. Trust me. This is
a nitpick for me, and I know it should, because this is unknown territory for all of them.
Sure.
But Bella's becoming like, obviously a swollen belly, but other than that, increasingly emaciated and weak and being drained of life. And you would think that Carlisle, especially, as well as any of the other ones, would put it together, aside from Jacob, who's the one that comes up with it. Oh, she's pregnant with a half vampire. It probably wants blood.
No shit, Sherlock.
Let's try that instead of like, oh, that is a good idea, Jacob. Like
It's
that
like
was
it's draining her. Why would a vampire be draining
drain her
her?
of her life. That seems like something you should have tried like as soon as you noticed that was happening. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and again, this all happens, and again, it plays. Again, this is just a setup. This is all just a setup of the 30 minutes of content in here to get to the next movie, which again we'll have a lot more I think to discuss here. But then I think the worst thing happens ever in a movie, and I know it even turned off a Academy Award-winning director from wanting to actually make this movie. Sofia Coppola was approached to actually direct this movie, and she said no because of what's called imprinting on an infant. Adam, can you explain to the audience what imprinting on an infant means?
I really don't want to.
Well, you have to. It's a review, so and I've decided it's you.
So I guess that's when, in this example, that is when Jacob imprinted on Bella's vampire baby, which prevented, I guess, her from being killed, right?
Right, which means
got a wolf
That,
pack.
that means that the wolf pack can't kill the baby, and they're
And-
bound for life.
oh, they're soulmates for life. That's
Yeah.
wow. That's something. I'm not gonna tell you how creepy that is. I don't think that there was no other way they could have done that to make that less creepy. That there was no way she could have written that to make that less weird and just awkward and smell of the P word in any kind of sense, way, shape, or form. Because that's just it's a creepy thing. I'm sorry. It's just really, really creepy and has no business being in this movie. I'm not a prude or anything like that, but it makes no sense and it's weird. It's just not good. You just don't do that. It makes people uncomfortable. And I can understand why, and I wholly understand why. There's so many ways they could have written themselves around doing something like that. You don't always have to be super true to the source material. Sometimes, people get angry when you say that, but this is a good example of that. You don't have to pay attention to the source material to do something that they did. The baby ages incredibly quick, which we'll, address in the next movie. They could have just waited till she was older and had done that. And, there could have been a reasoning behind that. They could have connected. Didn't have to be when she's a baby and he's literally sleeping on the floor of her room or on the couch while, that's the love of my life right there, being born out of your belly, barely just crawled. Oh, it's just so gross and creepy. Julie, you going to justify that?
Well,
oh, no. Canceled.
In the early stages of the relationship, and Jacob states it is purely platonic.
The fact you have to say that is something that again, let's make that even more clear. The fact you have to say that in a movie is wrong. I want to look at also, there's another movie, one of the Transformers movies. I don't remember which one it is. There's a big age gap between the two love interests in the movie. Michael Bay felt the need to say in the movie to speak about the Romeo and Juliet law, which apparently allows people to be together, even though there's a large age gap when they were probably an underage minor, but it's okay because, they were together and all that. Those are the kind of things I don't want in my movies. I really don't want to hear about underage people being, connected like that. But again, Julie, you can't justify it. It's incredibly creepy.
No, because then it only gets worse because they'll make jokes about it. Like at one point, it could be in part 1, it could be in part 2, where Jacob's like, "Oh, can I call you dad now?" to Edward. And it's like, no, she's still 7. Let's chill,
No, and it's incredibly weird. Just they could have done so many things to go around it. Whether Jacob was just protecting her and he didn't know why or something like that, and then as she got older, then there was a connection because again, she ages. I don't want to go too much into it, but she ages incredibly fast. So it could have made sense somewhat maybe in the next movie if you were to address it. There were a lot of ways to go around it that you didn't have to be so goddamn creepy about it because it just doesn't work in my opinion. It's weird. It's awkward. The baby looks creepy as hell. It's just it's really uncomfortable. And again, a lot of that I think is really going to go into the next one. But guys, I've kind of had enough talking about this movie. Let's just get into our final scores. I'm going to give Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1 a 1 out of 10. I really do not like this movie. It really has no reason to exist beyond just trying to take a few dollars out of every tween's pocket that needs to go watch the Twilight series. There's nothing remotely interesting in this movie. Give me a 30-minute slideshow, probably on YouTube, about what happens in this movie, then watch the next one. You're way better off. This is a waste of time. Everything's bad. The directing's bad. Everything I've complained about up until this point is in this movie 10 times more because of how just inorganic this movie feels and shouldn't really exist. It's a shame, you know what I mean? I think they could have had a substantially well done finale when we talk about the next movie, but this movie just kind of brings down the mood. And after I watched this, I really didn't want to continue. I honestly didn't really care where it went, even if Bella's turning into a vampire, which that sends a whole bunch of other things about like getting what you want, weird mixed messages to teenagers too, which again, no prude or anything like that, but I'm not into all that. So sorry guys. I know I'm not the target audience, but maybe it's a good thing I'm not the target audience. Adam, how about you? What do you think of this one?
I'm going to give Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 1. I thought I was being harsh. I'm going to give it a 2.8 out of 10.
I'd like to propose a toast to my new sister. Bella, I hope you've gotten enough sleep these last 18 years, because you won't be getting any more for a while.
I won't be watching this movie again. It was painful even the second time around. I'll just skip right to the last movie if I really have to. Not much happens to the point where I really thought that most of the events that happened in this one happened in the second movie in Eclipse. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say. I feel like I'm trying to like make things up to say about this movie. It's just incredibly interesting and incredibly a waste of time. That's really all I have to say about it as far as my comments. Julie, you're the last one. What do you think on this one?
I'm going to be giving Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 1 a 3.8 out of 10.
He likes it.
This is my lowest score of the series. It's really nothing. It's so dull. There's nothing that happens that's substantial. There could have been a way to condense this into one complete movie when you look at both parts. The only things that were redeeming for me was I go back to the wolf pack. I like Jacob kind of left the pack and went on his own. I'm not talking about imprinting. I'm talking about the wolf dynamic, the hierarchies. Jesus. It's the philosophy of like what would happen if a human got impregnated by a vampire. It's kind of what it does to the body. Okay. That's kind of interesting, I guess, but whatever. It wouldn't happen. You're exactly right. But this is a work of fiction, so
yeah. I mean, I gave mine the 2.8 just purely on scientific reasons.
Scientific research. Just, as a man, I don't think it works that way. But, breaking dawns, breaking beds, and breaking bones, and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean in this movie. It's a mess. And again, I didn't really talk about it, but the humor does turn up a little bit in this movie, especially when they're like breaking the bed and stuff like that. I kind of laughed. I'm not gonna lie to you. I had a good.
It was the most entertaining part of the movie.
Belly chuckle out of that, like, oh, that's pretty good actually. And there's a couple other comments where it seems like they're having a little bit more fun, but again, it's played so straightforward and just utterly ridiculous. Like, I can't imagine what it would have been like to be on set for this movie, especially you're like, I'm pregnant and I'm walking around, and her terrible acting, Kristen Stewart making her like faces the whole movie, and Edward just like, oh no, she's pregnant, and just like looking with shock face the whole entire movie. It must have been something to be on set of this movie, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, in the next movie when we look at the finale of the Twilight Saga. But again, what I want to know is in the comments below, what do you guys think? Did you hate it as much as I did? Did you absolutely love this movie? Am I missing something? Again, I'm not the audience, I understand, but maybe there is something I'm being a little bit too harsh on this one. But personally, I did not have a good time, and I don't see how really anyone can. It misses all the marks on the romance, but maybe there's something there that I don't see. What was your favorite scene? Did you enjoy the breaking the bed scene? I know you did. Imprinting, is it as creepy as we said it is? It is. Don't try to justify it. But again, we are The Real Movie Guys. Make sure you check us out on all your favorite podcasting platforms, here on YouTube as well. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. My name's Kevin. That's Adam and Julie. We are your Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll see you in the finale.